A quorum.
Are you recording?
And to say that this session is being audio recorded, just like every other P&Z Commission meeting. Please be advised that today we're also recording the video as well. Commissioners and staff will generally remain on mute except when speaking or voting, and will keep video of themselves on throughout the meeting. We have no public hearings, do we, Donna?
No, we do not.
Okay, so public hearings would not apply. So let's call the meeting to order at 7:03. And roll call, we've got Daryl, Mark, Alice, David, Matt, and Karen. So that's 6, I believe. Why don't we elevate Ann, since we haven't seen Ann in a while, to voting status. So reading and approval of minutes, the minutes of July 14th. Does anyone have any corrections or modifications on that? I've gone through it, looks pretty good. Hearing none, do I have a motion to accept the minutes of July 14th?
I'll move that we adopt the minutes.
Okay.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by raising your hand. Motion is passed. Is there anyone in the public that would like to be heard at this point?
It says we are just basically wanted to make an inquiry based on the July 14th minutes from the meeting. We know that Donna had mentioned more informatively about the property. I'm sorry, I don't know the number, across from Marty Miner's house.
Can you just, Cheryl, can you just identify yourself for the record?
Sorry, Cheryl and Jack Kinney, 21 Upper Kent Hollow Road.
Thanks.
We were just basically more of an inquiry into the status of that property. I know that Marty Miner is satisfied with the way it's coming out, and that they're trying to return the property back to farmland, agricultural purposes, and cows for Brent Kallstrom. But our concern is that we just kind of feel a little out in the dark. The work that's gone on at the property has been years and years. The time that it took to build the 16,000 square foot house down the road has taken far less time than the constant trucking of dirt and rocks on a daily basis. I know that the trucking has become less, but still, even within, let's say, the past month and a half, you're talking a triaxle every 15-20 minutes for 8 hours a day. So, you know, the dirt, the grime, the wear and tear it has on your house, your windows, your property. We're just trying to figure out, I guess, if the permit is closed, if there's an end in sight, or if there's a plan that they've put forward with the town that would help answer questions for other people other than just Marty and Carla Miner.
Yeah, we actually, I spoke to Vinny last month, and they're in the process of topsoil and seeding around the upper, on the hillside now. The upper pond is done. Once the seeding is done on the hillside, which when I went and looked at it was right before July, I've not been past there since then. But once that's all done, he's going to unsilt the silting pond at the bottom. And then he will clear that area up, and that area will be ready for cows. He's only getting deliveries Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday. That's it. He doesn't get anything else. He does get one water truck that comes in. He believes that the trucking that's going on is not just his, that there are other trucks that are going up and down that same route. He doesn't know who they belong to. And the reason that it's taking so long is the owner of the property had bought a piece of property over on Lake Warma. And he pulled Mr. Farisi off of the Kent Hollow job to work on the Lake Warma project, which took, I'm gonna say, at least 2 years, if not closer to 3. And so that was why everything had stopped. That house is now completed. Vinny is there by himself. That's where he's at this point in time. So according to the zoning regulations, if you're going to be creating a piece of property for agriculture, you don't really need a permit. It's just, you're allowed to do that. And so he expects that at least by the fall, that silted pond will be unsilted. And hopefully in the spring, they'll be able to put cattle out there.
I guess one of the concerns is we know what the permit was applied for. And then when we living here on basically the center of the road, between 341 and the property, see a lot more of what's going on than what may have been applied for. And trucking in and out of rocks and things like that, and not going down to Lake Warmong, and haven't gone down to Lake Warmong direction in probably close to 2 years. It's just a concern. I know that up until at the end of, I want to say mid to end of last week, they were his trucks. I can walk a dog down to Miners and back and pass 2 trucks in half an hour. I see them pulling in. So it's just, they've been, out of all the construction that's going on this road, they have been the most respectful. They are not speeding. It's not them in general. It's just an ongoing yearly project that is just wearing on everybody that lives on this road. So once it does become the cows down below and the fence is removed, is it then going to continue up top? Is there a plan other than that?
Yeah, turn this into an agenda item, maybe. I feel like we're a little out of scope for
Sorry.
a minute.
Okay. I think,
Not important, but
the upper portion is done. And so now he's just working on the hillside, and then he'll work on the bottom, and then he'll be finished.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
And then the property, I know you had questioned the property next to Marty.
Mhm.
I spoke to the owner of that property yesterday, and then again today via Bill Manassi. He was told today to close that driveway, put up no trespassing signs, fill in the opening that he has there, come back to us with a driveway permit application, a site plan, and he's going to be starting the process of building a single family house.
Great. Because when they were there, that was very dangerous. So appreciate you putting in the time and taking care of that.
Okay, so you
Great.
should have that closed in, and then no trespassing sign.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Cheryl and Jack, thank you very much, and we'll pay attention to this.
Great.
Appreciate it.
We
Thank you
appreciate
so
that.
much.
Thank you.
All right, old business. 5B1 for clarification of baseline of operations and aspirations of Club Getaway.
I know I put that on, I put in a recommendation, I put it in late. I don't know if anybody got an opportunity to read it, and my apologies. I was on vacation last week, and so I did, when I came back from vacation, I did have a conversation with Glenn, and we decided that he would take care of the electric charging things. What do you call them? Electric car charging stations. And so he created what you saw in your packet. And then today I just put up a definition for a special permitted use in the rural district. And I gave an option of 2 different definitions. One is for a rural resort and conference center, which was a definition that Dwight had proposed at one of the meetings that he was at. The second one I did was something called a recreational camp. And that recreational camp came from another town on the other side of Connecticut, which I kind of thought might work because it kind of does better define what you consider to be a recreational camp. And then my recommendation would be to add that in under section 3224 as number 15. And then I started to throw together some conditions that would need to be met in order for this use to be accomplished.
Okay, so I have two comments on this. The first comment is that the buyers of Club Getaway knew precisely what they were buying. They were buying a pre-existing non-conforming use. There is no question that they knew precisely what they were buying into.
Right.
And number two, I'm not the zoning commission making regulations for a single entity in the interest of a single entity, I'm not sure about. And I did have a chance to look at that. And as you all know, I am really, really concerned about this. And I think that the commissioners ought to put on their planning hats. Forget the regulation, forget the zone, put on your planning hats and look to see what creating regulation like this could do to Kent. There are many locations of which these resorts could happen in Kent. And if that's what we think that we ought to do, then I think that we can entertain that. But I think we ought to look at it from a planning perspective and not right now from a regulation perspective. And that's my comment.
Well, I think you can prevent that from happening elsewhere within the rural district by putting in the conditions. You know, it says that it would, as a principal use on a lot of at least a certain number of acres.
Yeah, but there's a lot of lots with a lot of acres. And there's a lot of money out there.
Yeah, you know, well then I guess, but then you have your other conditions that are underneath there, you know, so you can strengthen up your the parking. You can straighten up, you know, how you're going to handle traffic, how you're going to handle the licensing.
Right.
I mean, I don't know how else to do this. I don't think that I've always been taught that the purpose of regulations are to eliminate nonconformities. And so I think by doing, you know, creating a regulation, that's exactly what you're doing in this instance.
All I'm saying.
Wouldn't the traffic study option be like at least limit the number of uses to very close to one of the couple main roads? Because like if we tried to I think we could craft a regulation that would certainly make it very difficult to do this on one of the more distant large lots, because any sort of facility like this is going to need access for parking and a lot of traffic. So one could argue that you try to do it, say, out where we are or where I live, there's no good road access there. To suddenly say you want to support, you know, 600 cars an hour, it would be unrealistic. That's one way we could certainly make it a permitted use that would make it far less easy to put in a lot of the rural district, as an example.
So all I'm saying is before considering regulations, we should consider the planning aspect of this. This is the only thing that I'm saying. And I don't know if any other commissioner shares my concern, but I have it.
So what does the POCD say about this? I mean, we're very close to finalizing it. I don't recall there being anything in there about it. I know we mentioned that we should add something. Did anything get in there?
I didn't see any mention of it.
We didn't, and we determined that the point of the plan of conservation development is not to plan, but to guide. And we thought
Well, guide and planning, yeah.
Yeah, but not to plan. I mean, don't chuckle, David, because we're not talking about planning for Club Getaway. We're talking about this guide for our future planning efforts.
I think maybe the subtlety is lost on me, but you would think in our planning and conservation of development that in the development aspect, we would have at least a framework for having an opinion about a use like this. Because I'm not sure what other planning exercise we do other than these meetings. And I've only been on the committee for a year and change, but either we're talking about planning now, or else we would talk about it in the context of doing that document.
Yeah, so let me try to not be so subtle then. The plan of conservation and development is not the vehicle for planning for a specific property. It's
Right, but we're trying not to plan for a specific property. We're trying to plan for a use that we think shouldn't be a non-conforming use. I mean, isn't that kind of the whole conversation? Is we think this is a good use, and let's amend our regulations to account for it. I mean, isn't that the aspect of planning? Maybe I'm just misunderstanding it then, but
Well, as a planning commission, one of our tools is a POCD, but it's not our only tool. We're the planning, and then we're the zoning commission. So simply because it's not stated in the POCD does not excuse us from the act of planning in town. This is a judgment call. That's all I'm saying.
If we can't decide as a commission whether it's a use that we think is whether it's a use that should be allowed, how can it make it into the plan of conservation and development with as a strategy or as a recommendation? If the 7 members and the 3 alternates can't come to a consensus on whether the use is a good one.
well, we do talk about things like tourism, and we talk about how we see the role of Kent for recreational activities. I mean, do we have
We're all on? I'm sorry to interrupt, but don't you think we're all generally on the same page with those kinds of things? Alternative energy and
Yeah. So we're not making a decision so much as the use, as we're making a decision not to create any regulation for this non-conforming single use.
Wes, I agree with you 100%. And I've read David, the owner of Club Getaway, I forgot his last name, sorry. I read his document, and I read the information that his attorney gave us. And for like 5 minutes, I thought, well, maybe this is correct. Maybe we should limit it to property having 300 acres and really try to narrow down on a regulation with it. But quite frankly, after really thinking about it, I think we should leave it alone. And I don't know why we're going about changing it. And to change it into a resort conference center, rural resort and conference center, I think would be a terrible mistake. It's a camp. I think they utilize the property extremely well. I think they're a part of the community, and I think we should leave it alone. And if we start trying to change or review all the properties in Kent that are non-conforming, I think we're really mucking with things. And I think we should leave this alone and keep it that he uses the property exactly as its history has been. And if he has a special event, he comes and gets a special permit, or he gets permission for it, and let it be. I really feel we're opening Pandora's box if we broaden this permitted use classification. Just my thoughts.
Didn't this all start because we wanted to establish a baseline for what Club Getaway could do or historically had done, so that if they did something different, they'd have to come and ask us? Isn't there, if that's all this is about, isn't there another way to effectuate that? Like to have this description of what they are historically have done, they agreed to it in a deed, in a covenant, in a new special permit. I guess they never had one because they're pre-existing. Or isn't there, to just deal with this one because that's all we were originally trying to do here, was, you know, get a baseline for their operations. Isn't there a way to effectuate that without adopting a regulation on, you know, camps in general, or, you know, resort centers?
Can I speak for a moment? I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to chat, but so Karen, to answer your question, and my concern as the business owner is what happens, what is, and I said this last meeting, I'm sorry, the definition of a special event. I mean, I sent you that baseline of operation, right? My weddings and everything, but I guess the big question is the baseline of a special event, right? And is this going to be that, you know, my Camp Getaway for Adult program, is that going to be considered a special event? That is my normal, you know, that we do, you know, 15 to 18 of those weekends. I do, you know, this year specifically, I had 8 weddings. Is that wedding considered a special event? You know, we have, you know, all the sorts of different events that we do here. What is that? It's that consideration of what is a special event. But yes, what the precursor to all of this was obviously something that clearly was a special event, and that was that music festival that you know, I rented it out to. But moving forward, you know, it just made me think as a business owner, wow, can something that I normally do be considered a special event? And I guess that's where my biggest thing is to protect the future of Club Getaway.
Thank you, Dave.
Mark,
So,
I think last month we talked about this, and one of the challenges was it means that if they want to do anything, they have to go before ZBA. So we sort of, I don't say we abdicate our authority, but by not crafting a regulation, we leave them in limbo. And if you want to change anything, they have to do ZBA. And if we think that that's okay, then I guess we say our planning hat says we don't like this use as a general thing for Kent, and we're going to leave the spot use, and that'll just be how it is. And if the business sells, they'll have to understand they're a non-conforming use with no regulation. If they want to make a change, they have to go to ZBA. And if something happens where there's a complaint or an issue, you know, it'll be kind of in this netherland every time. So I think that was what maybe David's initial ask morphed into this goal to write a regulation so that they can fall in a normal process. But it seems like while we all think one of these is a good use, we don't want to have more than one, and therefore we don't want to write a regulation. So, you know, we're sort of, we have these mutually opposing desires, and I guess we're stuck.
well, do keep in mind that Club Getaway has operated for 50 years, and it's operated pretty successfully for that throughout the years. And so, Daryl, what do you think about this?
Well, over, you know, the past 2 decades, we've asked for numerous baselines of operation, and it seems like, you know, we're going to constantly be doing that. I actually thought we were working towards trying to bring a non-conforming use into conformity, to not keep repeating that cycle. That would take, you know, conditions to limit, you know, inappropriate areas from having applications applied on, you know, to these the same group of allowed activities if it were to become a regulation. But, it does seem like there is a reasonable path towards making it conforming and putting conditions on it to make it self-limiting. I'm fine either way. I would just be a little exasperated if I was David. It kind of seems like we've initiated stuff and sort of hinted that we wanted to go down the conformity route. And then every time we get there, we kind of pull the rug out from underneath the whole process and go back to just reverting to, it is what it is, here's the baseline, and let's not go any further with it.
So could we all think about this and then get back and see if we can move forward on something? We just got at the last minute this this document from the town. I like this the least of all. I like an overlay zone far better than what was proposed here. But I do think we need to think about by our actions creating an unintended consequence that anyway, how I feel.
Anna, is there another mechanism to effectuate a baseline being put in place without adopting a regulation that could permit this anywhere? A deed restriction, a covenant, something?
I don't know. I would think that once you start looking at a deed restriction or a covenant, it's kind of out of the zoning world at that point in time. It's something that gets put on the land records, and then how do you change it? And what mechanisms do you use to change it? What mechanism do you use to create that covenant and that restriction on a deed? I mean, it's something I guess I can ask Mike, but I don't know if that's ever been anything, that has ever been done. My main concern was if we leave it where he doesn't have an approved use and he has to go to ZBA, he's got to be able to prove hardship. And, that sometimes is hard to prove. And so while it seems easier for us to just say, let's leave it and let them go to ZBA, I don't think that's the fair thing to do. I think we need to figure out how best to handle this. And if this has been going on for, I think it's over a year.
Okay, well, I don't think there was ever a case with Club Med, with Club Getaway, excuse me, David, where it has ever been brought to ZBA. I mean,
No, because there was an approved use.
Right.
I believe that what happened was when we rewrote our regulations, his approved use that he was operating under was dropped from the definitions and from the use category because we were going to create a new regulation. And that's what made him pre-existing non-conforming.
And I'll jump in and say that I had requested, I'll say it again. I had requested a baseline of operations from Club Getaway after the special event that the music festival, quote unquote, last year. That it was somewhat of a difficult decision for us to make as a commission. It was difficult for David. It was difficult for his neighbors. At that point, I thought that it would be best to get a baseline, and I thought it would be best to codify that baseline in a regulation. So I think that's how we got started, Wes, to answer
that question.
Right. But I think that we can't I think that Wes is somewhat right, that we can't really move forward with understanding what we want to do if we haven't, as a commission, agreed that from a planning aspect, that's a reasonable use. I know that I believe that we all think that it's a reasonable use where it is. And some of us believe that it could be a reasonable use someplace else. So, you know, to go back to David's point, I don't know how we plan for it if the commission can't agree and doesn't have concrete evidence from the public that what they think. So I will be quiet now.
Should, then Matt, do you think that we ought to, because we haven't accepted the POCD yet, approach it from, you said the public, and that's the only public forum really that we have as a plan of conservation and development that's approved by the town, basically.
Well, I'm going to have the subcommittee and I are going to meet with Glenn. I think we're trying to schedule for next week. Not next week, the week after next. So I'll bring it up with him and see what he thinks about it. And it might come down to having to broach the topic publicly at, I think it might be too late then when we present the plan at a public hearing. We'll still have the opportunity to make some changes to the plan after that. You know, there's certainly references in the POCD to recreational facilities and the fact that we should be promoting recreational facilities. I'm not sure that Club Getaway falls into that category. We don't reference camps. We don't reference clubs. There's another word that I just finished searching that I didn't see reference to. So resort we don't reference.
Let me kick out a hypothetical. If somebody came to us and said they wanted to, you know, on 100 acres somewhere, have a camp with 20 horses, and they set up tents and people come and they stay for a week and learn about ranching and farming, and it has a lot of the same aspects of a Club Getaway where people come and they do what they do with social and other things together, and it's relatively low impact. I mean, I don't think we have a category for that now. It would kind of fall into some version of this. Do we think that if someone came to us with a credible plan, that we would think that's a use that would be suitable for Kent?
It would depend on whether it falls within our definition of a camp. I mean, Kent has a long tradition of camps, and we have several in town, right?
Well, I'm thinking of specifically one that includes some aspects of what a Club Getaway does.
Well, definition of a camp is any parcel on which are located living quarters or structures for recreational, educational purposes and accommodating for profit under philanthropic or charitable auspices 5 or more children under 18 years of age.
Yeah, so I was thinking if someone come and wanted to do an adult version of that, where it's not a kids camp. I mean, are we worried as a commission that another well-run, lower impact facility similar to Club Getaway could not exist in Kent, and that we can only ever have one and only one? And then the flip side is if David sells and the next owner is very combative and disagreeable, and we don't have a regulation to manage it, I mean, are we also okay with that potential outcome? Because that's really what we're looking at, is like, you know, possible futures. And then there's the future where like there's only one because we do regulation. It turns out a lot of people don't want to build camps and can't. I understand the unintended consequences thing, because I totally get it. But on the other hand, it also seems weird. We're trying to have our cake and eat it too. One use with a good owner that it's cooperative, it's non-conforming, is okay. But you know, we don't know if that's gonna stay that way.
Well, I think that we're not making a decision town-wide. We're simply making a decision to utilize that option number 1 in that memo that we got from the attorney. That is a pre-existing non-conforming use together with all of its pluses and minuses. That's what we're making a decision on. I mean, that was stated as option 1.
Yeah, and I guess the color of that is we don't think this is from a planning perspective, we don't think this is a good use for Kent. Like, we don't think Kent should have things the size of shape of Club Getaway.
Well, you can interject anything you want to interject by saying that. If by not deciding to change the status of it, that's a bias. I don't know. I guess if you want to make that implication, you can.
Well, I mean, it seems like that's what we're actually saying is we don't, or unless unless you're just saying we just don't know what the future might bring. Therefore, we should just leave it as is, and maybe another commission in years in the future may decide differently.
So could I suggest that that we all take what's been said tonight and bring it up again next regular meeting?
And it would be, Wes, your recommendation that we each commission member just go through the documents that we received and go through the recommendations that we've got and come up with sort of a, what we think, which
Right.
direction we should go.
Right. Yes. Yes.
And we're basically saying the options are status quo, or we think we should try to write a regulation. That's
Correct.
essentially what we're saying.
I think those are the 2 directions. That's right. Yeah. Right. So this is not an application, so there is no there's no timeline on this, but shall we then table this to the next meeting? Donna,
Yeah, I'll keep it on the agenda for the next meeting.
we need to vote on that?
I don't think so. It's not an application.
Thank you, everybody. Have a
Okay.
good night. Appreciate your time talking about this. Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Bye-bye.
All right, 5B2. This is an important regulation. Yeah, this needs to be a regulation. Donna, I was curious where you got a lot of this info from.
This I did not do. This was presented by Glenn.
It was Glenn, okay. Uh-huh.
And he's also actually going through the same exercise with Litchfield. So, you know, he's doing it for more than just us. He's doing it for other towns that have now been faced with the same dilemma on how to handle this.
Right, right.
So what he wanted everyone to understand is that anything that is yellow would be what he would consider comment discussion points. And he said, you know, this is a first shot, and
Yeah. So
if
this
you have
is,
comments, they'll tweak or you know, whatever the commission decides.
yeah, I think this is terrific. And that number 6 highlighted the side yard and rear yard setbacks that shall not be adhered to gets by your concern with some of these applications coming up. Correct? That an EV station is a structure. And but
Right.
what we're saying here is that it doesn't have to abide by any setbacks.
Right, but it doesn't address the front. which is in most cases where it's gonna go.
Right.
But you see, if you see, he just says it would not be required to adhere to a side yard or rear yard, but it would have to abide by the front.
I see. Ah. Okay, thank you. Right.
You know, so
What are the front setbacks different for commercial or residential?
yes. Yep. And depending on where you are. So in the rural district, it's 40 feet. But in the rural district, you're not going to have, I don't think, one of these chargers. You're just going to have one that is in the garage.
Right. That would be a use allowed, that would be an allowed use in a residential zone.
Right, because it would be attached to the wall in your garage. So you probably wouldn't even see it. But when you start looking at the village center residential 1 and 2, the front yard setback is 30 feet. And then in the village center commercial, the front yard is 25 feet. Unless you have 40 feet in the back, then you can swap it out. And if you've got other houses that are in line, and then you would stay in line with them. So, there really isn't.
Well, I guess the logic is that the front yard is facing the road and you don't really want this on the road. You want it.
Right.
I mean, that's the logic, and for most cases, it applies.
And just if you could clarify for me, I don't quite understand. If somebody slaps up a charging apparatus on the wall in their garage, that's not a structure, and we have no say over that, right?
Right. Yeah.
But if somebody puts up a post in front of they don't have a garage, and they put up a post with an electric charging station on it, and they wire it up, that's this residential use, which is permitted. Is that
Right.
how that works?
Right.
Okay.
It would meet the front yard. It would need to meet the front yard setback, but not the sides or the rear.
Yeah. Okay.
Does the setback apply to parking in any way? Like you can put the car where the car sits is independent of the setback information?
Well, it's not so much where the car sits, but it's actually the driveway. So you've got a setback for a driveway.
Yeah, because your charger is generally where your car is parked. So,
Right.
I mean, would it be possible to tie the permitting to the location of a parked car? Because if they park their car, if their driveway happens to be in front, and for some reason it's not like in the house or on the house, that seems to be that would be the place where the regulation doesn't seem to make sense.
Can you give me an example?
I mean, I guess anytime you have a parking lot that is not next to, like immediately next to the building, more than 5 or 10 feet, where you would have to have an extended cable in either like a commercial zone or, I mean, I guess it's hard to imagine a residence that this would apply to, but maybe people they park their cars outside and they have a stroll to their house. I don't know.
I'm trying to think, like I'm thinking in my head, Elizabeth, actually, or maybe even Lane. Elizabeth, they all have driveways. Lane, you might run into some issues because there isn't very much room there, and there are people who do park parallel to Lane Street. So that if they were going to put a charging station at one of those houses, they would have to abide by the front yard setback, but not by the side or the rear. That's the only, that would be the only place that I can envision this happening. Because once you get into the rural district, almost everybody has a driveway.
Right.
or the capability of pulling over. You know, Meadow Street, they all have driveways.
So, I mean, I was thinking like the house, one of the houses on 33 Camps would not have, where they park the cars, there's like no post there and it's not directly next to a house. So if that's the front, they actually wouldn't be able to put a charger there.
You wouldn't be able to put a charger within
Yeah,
40
car.
feet of the front property line.
Yeah, so they wouldn't be able to, where the car is parked, there would be nowhere to put a charger. I just don't know how common that is.
Could they put it on a structure?
There's no structure. They park their cars and then they're like 15 feet from the house, 20 feet from the house.
They put it on the back side of the house. That would satisfy the 40 feet?
Yeah, the driveway's on the front though. They'd have to drive around the house and park it in the grass.
Okay.
Maybe that's an edge condition. Is it possible to add language where, you know, the committee could make an exception based on like the actual layout of a commercial or residential zone where it just doesn't make sense?
Yeah, I would say side yard or rear yard setback requirements, comma, except as approved by the commission.
Yeah, I think that would fix that, because then we could look at it and say, oh yeah, that makes no sense. Put
Yeah.
it where you want. I like the advertising signage limitation. That's very nice.
I actually had a question about that. It uses the word entertainment. What would be entertainment?
They're talking about those televisions that play
Yes.
stuff.
But don't, part of this is that we want people to walk into town and patronize the businesses there. I'm just suggesting we remove the word entertainment.
I think David's right, because when Pocd came to us, when they redid all of their pumps, one of the things that that they wanted to put up were these televisions, mini TV screens. I think they have them at the Citgo over on 202 in New Preston or Marblevale or something. And they play advertisements. They play, you can stand there and watch part of the show. And I think that's what he's talking about.
Yeah, but for 4 hours? I mean, how long does it take to charge your car?
It all depends on the car and the level of the charging station.
I think most
I'm
people want to
just
get away
proposing
from
we take the word out. I think it's completely unnecessary, at least in the commercial zone. We want people to go uptown and grab lunch and do some shopping and.
Donna, does this number 9 exist mostly for the commercial aspect of who's providing these systems?
Yes.
It's the provider that has this,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, they use it to subsidize the cost. So
Right.
it's-
I get it. But I think it's dumb.
most people want to flee those things as quickly as possible. I know I do. I mean, I would be inclined to say, do not allow for it unless otherwise approved by the commission.
I think Ann's right, that word should come out.
Yeah.
And I also think that that's the second time that we've posited that we're gonna allow for some subjectivity in the commission, and I would rail against that in both cases.
Right. Which is where entertainment came in. Well, no, they're gonna show porn or something like that. I don't know. So, yeah, I agree with that, that it ought to be comma as I think the commission does need to weigh in on this. In each individual case.
For any advertising, right?
Donna, do you see an glaring issue here?
So you want to be able to weigh in on any of the advertising,
So,
not just the ones that exceed 1 square foot.
right, this would be in your schedule for permitting. So this would be an accessory to non-residential use, simply a zoning permit.
Right.
Right. So by saying commission needs to weigh in, that kind of truncates that.
Right.
Yeah.
And if we just remove the word, that doesn't solve the. Or is that too limiting to the people who provide the service?
Well, it's still advertising. I think entertainment doesn't enhance this at all. I agree with you, but it is advertising. And this is what these providers have in mind. It subsidizes their installation.
Mhm.
Don, I didn't understand number 7 item. Can you do?
I mean, if you put Tesla chargers in, you also have to make sure that they're less than half of the standard stations. Because Tesla is a non-standard charging type. So it means that Tesla could not come in and put their own proprietary system without putting some regular stations in also,
I see. Okay. Yeah. Right.
which I think is a good idea
Yeah.
like that.
Donna, what was the, where did the Kent School want to put their charging stations?
And Chappaqua Road, you know where the facilities building is?
Yeah,
There's a parking lot to the north of that building,
mm-hmm.
on the front row, closest to the roadway. So there's 2 rows of perpendicular parking. And so like, if you're looking at the facilities building, if you look to the right, you look up that hill, and then there's a flat area of
Yeah,
a
yeah.
parking lot. It's in that front row.
So even if they put that in the back row, they still wouldn't satisfy the front yard setback.
They wouldn't, because it's 40 feet.
Right. So is that something that the commission would, by saying in number 6, at the discretion of the commission, then we're going to get, we're going to need to weigh in and approve that subjectively in that location.
Right. By adding in the or as approved by the commission,
Right.
it would end up being allowed.
Do you think there's a way, Matt, to make that non-subjective?
Well, if you allow it at the Kent School, then why wouldn't you allow it at where? At the Patco. You know, I know they're different zones, but the Patco has a 25-foot. Because they have a 25-foot front yard setback, and 2 of their yards are front yards. Would you allow it at the Kent Barns? Would you allow it at the fire department? So I don't know how you make it without codifying it. I don't know how you decide. It seems that you're going to be answering, the commission is going to be answering those questions every single time. And then you're going to have to be really, you're going to have to be really careful about being honest and thoughtful and not run afoul of somebody who gets mad because their neighbor got it and they didn't.
So if they were to put up, say, a handicap parking sign on a post at a parking spot, how is that regulation managed?
I don't,
Even though it's a structure in the ground that violates the setback?
know, parking signs and directional signs are exempt from zoning. They are permitted as of right.
So I guess, is there any meaningful difference between a smaller post-based, minimal charging station than a handicap sign from a visual perspective? I mean, could we say that if you can violate the setback in a commercial zone if you have no advertising, otherwise you have to follow these rules, something like that?
I don't know the answer.
I agree with Matt. I prefer not to be answered a bunch of permissions for something that when we look at it, it's like, yeah, you should put your charging station there. It makes sense.
Do you want to look at this a little bit more, put together some of your questions, shoot them off to me by the end of next week, and I'll send them out to Glenn?
Yeah, sounds good.
And then if you want, because he did call me and ask me if I thought that he'd be at the meeting. And I said no, because you're just getting this now. So if you want, let me know if you want him to be here next month to answer, the rationale for some of the things that he's created. Would that be helpful?
I think it would be. I think the sooner we can get on top of this, the better.
Okay.
So I have one further question that's under 8283 permitting and required. That item number 2. That's requiring a certain level of installation for all new work.
I'll just leave. Mark and
Um,
stuff. I'm sorry, Wes, can you say that again?
Okay.
So under 8282,
Yeah, under the schedule on 8283 permitted and required. It has number 2, all districts level 2 EV charging stations meeting or exceeding 10% of all parking spaces are required as part of new construction. So that's to be a requirement for new, that you're required to put in PVC.
Yep.
Isn't that kind of an overreach?
yeah, I guess it really all depends how proactive you want to be and thinking about this Kent sustainability team. Would this be something that they would like? I mean, since that's now the newest hot topic button thing, that would satisfy some of their.
Yeah. Well, I mean, all of this is getting massive subsidies anyway. So this is just yet another subsidy. So this is a suggestion for a regulation?
Yep. So what he did basically was he created a whole new section called 8280 electric vehicle charging. You know, instead of just trying to fit it in somewhere. You know, just by changing, like I had recommended changing this, the definition of structure. His solution was to create a whole new section.
Yeah.
Which kind of makes sense. I mean, you know, it kind of falls in line with
Sense, but
windmill.
somebody's paying for it. Right.
I mean, that applies to a lot of our regulations.
Okay, so what we'll do is just, if you guys want to shoot me off some of your questions, some of your comments, let me know if you think that Glenn should be at the next meeting to answer them. And then I'll get them to Glenn and we'll get him on, and we'll table this to the next meeting.
Great, and
Make sense?
so what will this require then? This will require the whole zoning amendment. We'll have to go through the entire
Yep,
process.
public hearing,
Yeah,
notification to the, you know, the adjoining towns, governments,
right, the whole shoot.
COGS, the whole thing.
So if we have something else, it would be a good time to insert that as well.
Exactly. Yeah, like Club Getaway, but we'll step on to that.
Okay, so 5B3, nothing from Virginia Bush, right?
No, actually, at probably 25 minutes after 6, Gary sent me what he had created. I haven't even really had an opportunity to look at it. I don't think Virginia has seen it yet either. Gary was trying to get it to me as soon as possible because he was going on vacation on Saturday. So we'll have it for the next meeting. It'll give me an opportunity to look at it. It'll give Virginia an opportunity to look at it, and then we can have the discussion at next month's meeting.
Great, great. Okay, so there's no new business. Staff reports.
I just wanted to let you know that the land use administrator job is posted on the town's website with a close date of today at 4 p.m. I had also placed it on the Casio website, which is the Connecticut Association of Zoning Enforcement Officers. And I placed it on the listserv through UConn for the planning organizations. I did receive 2 applications, and what I'd like to do is get the subcommittees together possibly next week to set up an interview with the candidates. So that maybe we could try to get this done so that we could have somebody starting maybe Labor Day.
Sounds good to me. I think I was not here and perhaps was volunteered for that subcommittee.
Well, we thought that since you were chairman, that maybe it would be a good idea for you to be
Okay,
there.
great.
So, and I think it's Alice, right? And Wes, and was it Adam? Who, I don't even know who the.
No,
third-
it was me, but I'll be up in Southwest Harbor for the next 2 weeks, starting Saturday.
So you will be back until the 29th?
Correct.
So what kind of action does the subcommittee need to do? Do they need to ask for it? These interviews? So certainly I know they need to conduct them.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, so I'll send out a doodle poll for availability. And then we'll do the interviews. I would love to be able to do the interviews in person.
Definitely.
So you know, we can do them in town hall.
Yeah.
And then after that, then both the subcommittee, the hiring subcommittee would meet, make their recommendation of who they want to hire, start date, salary, any special conditions. And then that recommendation is made to the selectmen so that they can just rubber stamp it and send out the offer letter.
Okay, is the subcommittee then making a recommendation to the commission? And then the commission would make the
Yes.
recommendation? Okay.
Yep.
But any commission member, of course, can sit in the interviews.
No,
No?
it would just be the hiring subcommittee.
Okay. All right.
Donna, this is, did you say you have had 2 responses to the post?
Yep.
Theoretical question, what if neither of those candidates and let's assume we don't get any more, are for whatever reason totally unacceptable, and we have no other postings, what in the past does the town do? Because it seems like we don't hire search committees, we just post jobs.
Right.
So
Well, then I would put it on Indeed.
what are the sources other than,
Then
What?
I would put it on Indeed at that point in time.
so it's still a matter of just posting on site, okay.
Right, yeah. It's not that, we hire an outside search firm,
Right,
because they usually get a fee of, when I was doing it, it was at least 10% of the annual salary.
well, that's why I asked the question, is that I know we wouldn't do that, the town wouldn't do that.
Right.
What happens if you get no one responding to your posting? That's
I
just,
don't know. I don't
okay,
know. I'm hoping that that's not gonna happen.
well, I know, but
Then I guess I don't
I
retire.
hope is one thing, we gotta have somebody in the city with do the job. Okay, I guess there's must be in municipal administration, there must be, this has probably happened somewhere in the world, so.
Well,
what you-
the bylaws do state that I think it's the chairman of the commission that can act in the ZEO's place in the absence of the ZEO.
Right,
And Wes would be the one who would be responsible for processing permits.
Don't you leave, Donna.
They Wes mysteriously disappears, cannot be found anywhere. I would assume, Alice, we hire harder. We keep expanding.
I
the
guess so.
search.
I guess so, right.
So I think that 3 people would be preferable on the subcommittee. So Daryl, when are you back?
The 29th. I know you'd be meeting in person, but I could try to zoom in from up in Maine. You don't
So
want to
could
delay.
we do that, Donna, do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we can have a combination meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Daryl, would that be okay by you? Will you
They have a
see this?
lobster roll hidden off camera, yes.
Only one? You're a lightweight, Daryl.
I need to keep one hand butter free to operate the technology.
Okay,
I didn't say how big the lobster roll was.
exactly.
So you have that kind of connectivity up in Maine?
Yeah, the house does. So
Okay,
I think the front terrace does.
Okay, all right. So I will send out a doodle poll tomorrow and see what we can get for the week of the 15th.
Okay.
Daryl, do you have a preference in time? I mean, we should do this, I'm thinking, do you want to do it at 7 or? Well, no, we're going to be doing this in person. Yeah,
I think it would be better late afternoon if that,
do you want to try like 5?
yeah, or 4 or 5.
Yeah, that's probably good.
Okay,
Alice, is that okay?
4 to 5, yeah, it depends on the day, I'll just
Well, sure.
wait till your doodle comes.
okay, all right. So I'll shoot for like 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, sounds good.
Okay.
That's all I have for the staff report.
Okay.
Um,
So number 8, POCD subcommittee.
yeah. Glenn wanted to set up another meeting and we were looking at the 18th. But Mark is not available and neither is Karen, so I'm thinking that maybe we need to push it off.
That's the 18th of August.
Yeah. Matt, what are your thoughts?
We haven't heard from Adam, right?
Adam said that he would be able to make that, but he would not be able to make tonight. Because he'll be back then next week. So it would just be you and Adam and Glenn.
So even so, that's not a quorum, right?
right.
So, I don't think that we can do it on the 18th without Karen and Mark. I'd prefer to have all four of us, right, for this last review before we go back to the full commission.
Yeah, I agree.
So
Karen,
yeah,
when do you
let's-
come back?
21st, Sunday.
Okay. All right, so then we'll shoot for something the week of the 22nd instead.
Yes, I can do that, Donna.
Okay. Matt, how about you?
Hold please. I'm gonna open up my calendar. I'm definitely around. I know I've got a couple of meetings that are happening that week. After the 22nd, where I turn 55.
What?
Oh,
Imagine. Anyway, so yeah, I don't want to do it on that day, but I could do it on Wednesday, the 24th, or Thursday, the 25th. And I'd like to avoid Friday, but as of right now, I don't have anything planned for that night.
okay. All right, I'll do a doodle poll and see what we can get.
So then, as you all know, we had the informational meeting on the 30th of June. We met with the Plan of Conservation and Development Subcommittee on the 21st, and we went through a compilation of all of the of Glenn's notes, and we generally agreed with the changes that Glenn should make to the document and which changes he shouldn't make. He's made those changes, and that's this meeting that we're trying to get to, is to review those final changes. Once the subcommittee has agreed with those changes, then we'll recommend that the full commission review that document, and then from there, I believe we would hope to set we would hope to schedule a public hearing, right, where we would present that final document to the public and get some final feedback, and after which we would adopt, and then we'd have a certain 65 days, is it, Donna?
Yes, yeah. The way that Glenn was looking at the timing right now, he's looking at November, the beginning of November. I think once we accept, then it's 65 days. That's when the clock starts ticking.
And we have to, there's a certain number of days that we have to set aside for the warning of the public meeting, yeah?
Right. Yep. Yeah, and then it has to go to the Board of Selectmen as well for their adoption or their approval.
All right.
And if they don't adopt it, it's just their agreement.
So yeah, so with putting this pushing this out another week in August, hopefully we can get it done before Thanksgiving, right? So before the holiday season really starts in earnest.
Yep.
That it can finally be adopted after the waiting period after the public meeting.
Yep. Okay. David?
So the Housing Plan Committee, we completed our final draft. So at this point, it's open for public comment. It's been posted in a bunch of places, and I've been telling everyone about it, as I'm sure most of the members have. Hopefully you've all seen it in its final form. If you have any last comments, it's open until the 31st. And then we're on the agenda for planning and zoning, I believe, are the 8th, the September 8th meeting. And assuming that it is approved by this commission, then it'll go to the Board of Selectmen for the September 15th meeting. And I think that would be done and dusted. And we got a 4-year break before we start the process again.
So the plan does not go to public meeting?
I believe it just gets signed by the Board of Selectmen. It gets adopted there. think that seems to be, it seems weird to me that this is not like more well-defined in statute, but apparently this seems to be what has been done in other towns. So it's Jocelyn's recommendation.
Great. You guys are gonna beat us.
Well, there's less to cover. I remember it's a collaborative race. We all win.
Hold my hand.
Jocelyn had sent an email out about the timing and he was actually saying that because there were people, I think that this is what I remember, that because there were members from planning and zoning on the POCD subcommittee, and because it was presented for the POCD, that maybe she could skip the step of coming to planning and zoning. And I answered for you guys and said, no, I think planning and zoning in its entirety would love to see the plan.
Yeah, I mean,
That's why it's on the agenda for the 8th, because they're accepting comment until the 31st of August.
Well,
For an opportunity to make any change.
it's our subcommittee, so yeah. Right. Terrific. David, thank you very much.
Of course.
So item 9, permits were there. I didn't see that in the.
It was, I didn't finish it. It's, so next month you'll have 2.
Okay. Great.
It was a busy, even though I wasn't here for a week, it was a busy time. I don't know. I think I probably did 8 or 9 large permits, new houses. Next month I'll put it out there. Well, you'll get both of them.
It's okay, Donna.
It's just not normal, so.
Just
So,
put it up until October.
you know,
I'm
I
sorry?
know that you like this Connecticut Federation of Planning and Zoning Agencies quarterly newsletter. And
I
it-
do like it.
it had some good stuff in it.
It does.
Yeah. it had-
Very informative.
Yeah, I mean, this first article, September 2022, was very encouraging. That given the proper documentation and backup, then you can win.
Yeah.
Against a bully.
It does look like it's done in somebody's garage in like 1987 though, which I guess adds to the appeal in a certain way.
Well, it actually is very nicely formatted. It's just that it's 11 by 17 paper. So,
Right.
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 and I think Steve Byrne has been doing this newsletter forever, since there's been zoning.
I already agree with Wes. It always has interesting stuff in it.
It
Yeah.
does. It does.
So moving on to the second page of that, and I guess this is planting a seed. This electronic meetings are here to stay. And I do believe that once this has happened, you can never take it away. That people have got to be able to do this electronically.
Yep.
But I am not willing to accept that forever we will not have in-person meetings. That we need a combination of the two.
And we will be. Joyce is working very diligently to get the large meeting room set up. I was with her on the initial meeting with the technology company, and just chatting with him about what our needs are as a planning and zoning commission. What a typical meeting is for us, and then what a not typical meeting where the whole room is filled, type of a thing. So they've ordered all the equipment, they've met with the electrician, they know what wires need to be pulled. I think they did meet with the carpenter, or they're close to it.
Yeah.
So everything's been ordered, we're just waiting for it to come in.
Yeah. Well, for example, I know that the Board of Finance does exactly that. They have in-person meetings,
Yeah.
but it's also Zoomed. Yeah. And that's in town hall.
It's not, they're recorded.
It's
Like
what?
you can't get the Zoom link.
Oh,
But if they're gonna do a proper hybrid meeting room setup, it sounds like that's great news.
Yes. Yeah, it's great news. It is, so. And from what he said, the technology is not going to be difficult to use.
Right, right. And finally, density limits on cannabis uses removed.
Yes,
Thank God we opted out. That was a well advised action. Yeah,
I think so.
yeah.
So that's that.
So do we need to go into executive session?
Yeah, just to give you a quick update on the two cases, that would be great.
Okay. So we'll go into executive session at 8:23 p.m. If we can stop our recordings.
I'm going to put June. She's going to be put in the waiting room. I'm going to 8:39. Okay, so we're recording on both. And I just need motions for 12 and 13, which are the typical ones, just to keep you guys informed. I need two people to move and second.
I will move that we follow the advice of our legal counsel with respect to the two pending actions against the town.
And second,
All in favor?
thanks, Daryl.
Raise your hand. Okay, those motions are passed. And finally, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I will move that we adjourn
Wait, thanks, David.
in record time.
Yes, indeed. All right.
We did our best to extend it though.
Yep. Something tells me September 8th will not be like this.
No, no.
No, I have at least two public hearings.
Yeah, right. Okay. Good night, you all.